Welcome, everyone, to the live podcast, Win More on Purpose. Today, we have Dale Dupree with us on elevating sales, crafting unforgettable client encounters, and leaving a lasting legacy. The agenda, for those of you who don't know, it's going to be a conversation. We're here learning together, each and every one of us. If you have any questions, write them down. There's going to be a Q&A at the end, and there'll also be a recording if you need to jump out for whatever reason. To put into the chat, just to start off, everyone can let us know where you're focusing on your business, where you're coming in from today, or what it is that you do. And just to introduce myself, for those of you who do not know me, my name is Jakob Steinberg. I'm a sales coach. About 4.5+ years ago, when I first went into the coaching space full time, I noticed that people were able to get to 6-7 figures on their own. They're good at what they do. They're passionate. Some point along the way, they learned how to speak to people, but they'd hit this glass ceiling, whether it was because sales is automatically associated with a quintessential used car salesperson, that sleazy, pushy, transactional individual, or whether it was just they were winging it and they needed more processes and strategies to get them moving along. And that's really where I came into the picture with mindset, technique, skills, helping people to have that confidence and clarity to really take things to the next level. I've had the pleasure of working together with quite a number of people that are pretty well known on LinkedIn, whether it's Kai Fishman, Hoodie Bluch, Hoodie Greenberger. And thank God, people at the 6-7 level have been able to grow by even 50% in the first 60 days of working with me. At the 100K mark, even 150% in the first 60 to 90 days, or even just people starting out, solopreneurs, 240% in the first 45 days. And I'm really excited about today having Dale on. I have been mentored and coached by Dale myself, have read his book and actually even used it today in a client session. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Dale.
Yo, thanks for having me. Full circle. It's fun to be here. It's good to be caught up. It's good to sit in front of your audience. I'm excited to chat.
Definitely. Tell us a little bit about, yourself before we get into things.
Yeah, my name's Dale Dupree. For those that don't know me, my friends, they call me the copier warrior. It's an old moniker that I created back in the day when I first started in the B2B space, where I transitioned from the entertainment space, where I played in a touring band that played heavy metal. Yeah. So if you want to Google my name, Dale Dupree, and the word Imperial, which was the band that I played in, your brain can be melted as like an additional perk of listening to this podcast today. But I digress. Getting into the B2B space from the entertainment side was pretty boring. I walked into a space also that is like probably the dullest, most vanilla space in B2B copier sales. And in that space, there is a lot of B2B that goes on for sure. But really, what I got to learn is I got to learn people. I got to learn consumerism. I got to learn transactional sales, and I got to learn like high pressure, dog eat dog environments very, very well, like hands on, basically. I didn't just like hear the stories. I was the stories. And within the first couple of years of doing that, I decided, that I was having some decent success, but that I wanted a lot more. And really, I looked at my first 2 years as total failures. My first year, I was like 30 something, 8%, 33%, somewhere in there to quota. My father fortunately was my boss and had a rule of thumb of playing the long game and said, "You got one more year, we'll see what you can do." I hit more into the 70% range, which I think gave him a little bit of hope. And then after that, I just started breaking every record in the book. And really, where that transition came in is when I changed my mindset around the way that I sold a very transactional item. Instead, I decided, hey, I'm going to play the long game. I'm going to build a legacy. I'm going to create wonder for people inside of the interactions that I have with them. I'm going to craft a narrative through the experience that I give that tells the future story of what these folks ultimately want to achieve for themselves and not what I'm selling at the end of the day. And so because of it, like a lot of people called me stupid or silly or dumb, back in these days, especially because I had this very grandiose perspective that was very creative in nature. And it wasn't like hard closing for paperwork. Well, I became like one of the most coveted sales reps in the area. And then, my secrets leaked to the world through recognition from manufacturers and, the industry itself. And everybody wanted a taste of the copier warrior and what he was doing. And if you want to see like an old, just for as a bonus for everybody listening to, after your brain melts from my music, if you want to see an old web page, you can go to copierwarrior.com. I actually have kept the original page up. It's a lot of fun to go back and reminisce on that, but that was built in 2012. And so what you'll see there is, maybe some updated copy to an extent, but for the most part, what you'll see there is just a bunch of stuff from literally back in 2012 that I put up, videos, interactive pieces. And really that'll give you a taste of how I was really creating change from the narrative standpoint inside of the industry itself. And, the difference that I was providing to the community and why I stuck out like a sore thumb and was the most unforgettable person around town. And because of that, it built my brand, it built my reputation, and ultimately it earned trust and credibility with people that led to my success. 2019, I left the copier space after 13 and a half years and joined myself and I at the Sales Rebellion as the co-founder. And I decided that I wanted to give people a chance to be able to do what I did, no matter what their industry was, and ultimately to be able to help them to build legacies, to change the freaking game inside of sales and do something from the narrative standpoint that most people don't believe you can do to begin with. But like to take those words, those sentences, those statements, and say, bet and watch this. So we've been doing this for about 5 years now over the Sales Rebellion. I love it more than anything in life. It's helped me to ultimately design my happiness and create something that I've always desired to have for myself, while also just still doing what I love, which is helping people, serving individuals, and just like doing things like this, talking all day, breathing life into other people's walks, being able to give them wisdom and guidance through the multitudes of different experiences that I've gone through myself, so that maybe they will learn something a little bit different than I had to, and to find that success that I've ultimately achieved for myself vicariously through those situations. The Sales Rebellion stands for a couple things. We believe in people over products, community over commission checks. We believe in experiences over performing a pitch. We believe in fellowship over negotiations, and we are here to tear down the castles of the old guard of sales and build a kingdom of rebels with people just like you listening right now.
Amazing. Absolutely fantastic. And as a rebel myself, and someone who has been a student of the rebellion for so long, it's really exciting to have you here. Let's jump into it. One of the first things I think that people struggle with is defining a better sales experience in an outbound motion, right? So many people, and I spoke about this, in a post today actually on LinkedIn, where people understand the idea of creating an experience for someone from a customer service perspective. But the idea of creating a better sales experience through an outbound motion, let alone inbound, is something that's just so hard for them to comprehend. So, how do you define that?
I look at it like this: that in a very normal motion in regular life, that things are we hear and we experience things differently when they are curious, when they are a little bit different than everything else, when they are unexpected, surprising. They're really like, it's just this ultimate element of giving somebody something that they don't normally get. So we talk about it as interrupting the typical patterns, which is an old sales playbook, uh keyword, in the Sandler system. We look at it though from this perspective, less of this perspective of like you do it in order to get a different reaction from people, and we look at it as this thing that people deserve. Like people deserve to experience something that's not a phone call where the person on the other end is saying, "Can I have 30 seconds to tell you why I called?" And then, diving into a pitch. People deserve to be at the forefront of the experience. They deserve to be the center of celebration, if you will. And a lot of the time in sales, we just don't do that. Now, here's the thing that I just want to point out too is that it's not like we don't believe in cold calling. Like it's not like we don't believe in traditional marketing. Even it's that we think there's a better way for people to experience our inherently experience, I should say, our uh, outreach in regards to the way that we're trying to prop up our own brand and recognition. and that it's it's something that's more enjoyable for people because of that. So you can still make a bunch of cold calls and get set meetings and sell stuff for sure. Like that works just as well to an extent, like in a world in your particular world and to context. But when you do something like in my early years, as an example, go and drop out a whole bunch of pieces of paper that specifically are crumpled up, or like this version of the crumpled letter. We call this the pre-shredded letter. As you can see here, it's all shredded up down here at the bottom. But imagine that you're a person at a doctor's office and you receive that. Somebody comes in the door and like gives you this. You're going to respond to that a little bit differently than you would that call that's like, hey, can I have 27 seconds to tell you why I called? And because of that, again, like I'm giving somebody something that they deserve through an experience, and I'm putting them at the forefront of the experience and not making it about me and what I ultimately want to sell, but making it all about this curious thing that then drives to the narrative of how I can fix the issues that you might be experiencing. And like I think what's interesting about this statement to me the most is that I say it with a lot of confidence. And I say it with a lot of confidence because for a long time now, I've been in sales since 2007. Woo!
Still in
17
it.
years, right? That's a long time. For that long, I have experienced better outcomes from this type of non-traditional approaches than I have anything else. I've watched other people do the same thing, but if you rewind back to the first time I ever did this, not only was the first time I ever took a little envelope that had a crumpled letter inside to a business very successful, but then from that success stemmed, 19, 20 out of 30 more drops to be successful just the same. So here I am, this guy that's being told, like, this is the statistic. You have to do 100 dials to maybe make one sale. This was like literally what I was being told. So make 200, right? And do that every day. So that way you can have a better chance of one sale per day, 5 a week, 10, every 2 weeks, 15 a month, right? Like at the minimum, right? Like that's people kind of read it into my thought process like that. Well, what if I just did 30 calls and I just dropped a bunch of these letters off? Well, I experienced what that outcome looked like. I watched, not only did I watch people respond very quickly to that outreach, but then over time, like let's just say 2 years into my sales career using this methodology, I just started like legitimately getting inbound leads, like of people that I had done some marketing with at some point through this outbound motion and this experiential perspective. And people just would like send me an email or call me and say like, hey, I'm like your biggest fan. I've been collecting all of your stuff that you've dropped off for the last 2 years. We're ready to do something. Come in and sell us. Where there's no one else in the area that we'll do business with. And just the thought of that was wild to me. Like, how do these people know me so well? Even and really, again, that goes back to just this ultimate identity of the experience we give. If you give the right experience, your brand will blossom, and ultimately your reputation stems from that. And when people are happy, and when you're fixing things for them, and you're making them the forefront of all the attention, you become pretty popular. And then of course, you got to back that up. So it's like right product, right organization, right. These things are very important as well too. But yeah, it starts with you and your dedication to these things. That would be my extremely loaded and diatribe answer.
No, it's awesome because so many people get stuck in this idea of the transactional way sales has become today. And one of the things that's always stuck out from the content that you've put out and the messaging is we need to sit back and understand that time is the currency of sales and attention is the exchange. We're not calling to set up an appointment. We're calling in the hopes of earning their time. It's bringing that human to human interaction and respecting people's time and having empathy for them and being loud yet coherent in a way that they're going to appreciate us reaching out to them. And that's how you give an experience. And I think to a certain degree, right, when we go through that, we start understanding what's the purpose of giving that better experience, right? Because the one that sellers are giving today is just not good enough.
When I think about this, I think about the philosophy of sales. If ultimately, if you are going to be happy in your walk in life, I think that one of the things that's very important is that us as humans recognize how small we are, and ultimately that if such a small thing in such a big place exists, there's got to be more than just like luck or coincidence involved in this. There must be some intentional identity in our existence. And because of that, I look at the philosophy of sales as ultimately this intentional concept of I got into sales not because it was the only option, right? Because no one would hire me or because I didn't have a degree. I got into sales because ultimately I believe that it creates ultimate freedom for myself. And through that ultimate freedom and attaining that ultimate freedom, that means I have freedom of finance, freedom of time, freedom of family, freedom of love, freedom of everything that you can possibly imagine. Like ultimate freedom is the thing that we should all be after in life, and sales provides that for us, but only if we put others first. So seek to serve is it's a statement that we probably have heard many times, many of us. Seek to serve, right? It's like, yeah, I've heard that. Somebody said that at some point. Some drunk guy at a bar one time, like we've all heard it to some extent. But what does it really mean? Ultimately, I believe in this identity of like detaching from all the things I just said about ultimate freedom, that like I would desire to achieve it, but I have no expectations of when it shows up. I have not put together any type of pattern for myself of like in 5 years I'll be at this level. Instead, I put a level of trust, and ultimately behind that trust, I put a set of actions and rules that no matter what, if I'm doing those actions and I'm playing by those rules, that I am achieving that morality that I seek to bring to sales. And ultimately, I am going back to the roots of what sales ultimately is: service. Giving people something to latch onto around a sale isn't, oh, they saved me money. It isn't, oh, they have the newest product, oh, they have the most advanced technology. Those are the perks, right? Those are the things that like naturally happen if you're dealing with the right folks, like the copier warrior. But at the
Right.
forefront of all those things, what is actually being accomplished for you is that your time is being given back to you within a process, that your efficiency is elevated inside of what it is that's being provided to you around that product or that service. And these things, they impact you professionally and but mostly personally. Like if I can have 30 minutes back in my day around a specific process just because of one simple decision that a salesperson proposed to me, right? I can quantify that 30 minutes a day over the course of a week, a month, a year, 10 years. And all of a sudden it's like, well, this makes sense. Like if he could do this here, what else could he do?
Right.
And like allowing people to understand that ultimately is where that service led, concept comes from. Like I think again, I come back to this, like this purpose of sales. Like what is like the actual calling of sales? And do we believe it individually? Do we believe that all of us are in sales? That a teacher sells, structure, that a broker sells a network, that a seller sells themselves. Do we believe these things ultimately, or do we think that sales is a function, right? Do we think it's a department? Do we think it's a place where these revenue generating machines live, that bring the money in for us, and then we do all the managing over here? Do we believe that even like the deployment of the product that the seller sells is also sales? Selling people on hey, well, that was a great install. Hey, that was a great first 90 days. Hey, this billing department is freaking fantastic. Like who says that? Like are we really ultimately recognizing sales true power and worth, and then applying it, or are we kind of just dumbing it down and letting it be sales?
Yeah, and it's interesting because when a lot of people hear this for the first time, they automatically push back on this idea of, yeah, but that takes a lot longer to do that than sending a bunch of emails in mass. Yeah, it might, but you're going to change your life and the people that you're trying to serve and to help, and your life will be much better because of it. And in the end of the day, it will also move faster, right? It sounds about quality versus quantity, right? If you're getting a ridiculous, small return rate because you're sending out mass emails, and you can get so much better from actually trying to serve people and give them an experience and show them how you're different than all the 50 other people that tried to call them this morning, they're going to want to be served by you. And you're not just going to change your own, career, you're going to change your life and everyone around you in your community and the people you're trying to serve. So ultimately, it becomes a shorter process, and like quality versus quantity as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I when you say that, like the first thing that goes to my mind is my inbox. And so right now my inbox, let's just like looking at this real quick, I would say I probably have about there's easily 40 emails right here that are subject lines such as coaching and the best way and looking forward to, and I mean, this is just insane what I'm looking at here. Elevating your sales reach, Dale X, the Sales Rebellion. This is what I see in my, and like anything that I just said just now. Like if you're listening, does like any of that feel like something worth your time? Probably not. So, people that would say like, yeah, but I can send a 10,000 emails out and get responses. It's like, no, the only thing that you'll find is you'll find people in a weak moment. And the weak moment will be defined in a couple different ways, just the same that like the word describes, right? So the word would describe, or the phrase would describe that somebody is dealing with something that is causing them to kind of like open the door, but in a way that's vulnerable and not actually good, right? And not the good, I should say the good kind of vulnerability is what I should say. So like somebody could be having a really big issue right now, and they just happen to see your email and it just happened to say something that made them open it, and then they go, you know what, I do want to get rid of this pesky widget that I have in my office. And in that moment they write you back and go, I'm interested, when can we set some time? And you respond and you give them a calendar invite, and then the rest of the day goes through and the widget stops being the way that it has been, and tomorrow starts and the widget's working just fine, and the next day and the widget is also okay, and now it's been a week where the meeting was set and the person cancels it off of your calendar. And like, look, we've all experienced that, so it's not like I'm making this up. This is a very common experience that people have. And that's it's the type of weak moment that you'll find in people, that just because the timing, quote unquote, was right doesn't mean that somehow you're going to win the business all of a sudden. Because it just because I wrote them doesn't mean that they said, like, just because they've given me an opportunity, I should say, from me writing them, doesn't mean they didn't have a great relationship with the person that sold them that widget. So even if that widget was a problem for them, maybe in the process of it, the salesperson, who's an incredible salesperson, sends them an email and goes, hey, I've been watching the problem with the widget. I see that everything is good though now. Anything I can do for you? And they're like, yeah, no, it's good to hear from you. And then, when it comes time for your appointment, you don't know any of this context. You don't have any of these stories. And this is why sales, to me, like, we've cheapened it to this transactional state where we do nothing but just pretend like people are supposed to take appointments with us to see what we have to offer, as if someone owes you anything. That's garbage. And so this weak-minded perspective of sales, I think, is the thing that's killing it in the first place. And I'm not some like big egotistical hotshot about this stuff either. Like, I'm probably the softest, kindest person that anybody on this call's ever met, or anybody listening right now. I'm the big Dale Dupree teddy bear. But ultimately, I do believe that we have to take ownership inside of sales. We have to, if we want to achieve the things that we just talked about earlier around the morality of sales, around the purpose of sales. We have to believe it, and we have to take that action on a daily basis. We have to understand that if I send 1,000 emails, sure, I'm going to set some appointments, and honestly, some will convert. Right? That's what we have to remember and understand. But the rest of that list of 10,000, the 94% of people that never respond, you just burn through those people. They want off your list. They want nothing to do with you. They'll never remember your name. You're indifferent to those people, and indifference is the enemy of sales. You need a good relationship or a bad relationship, never indifference. So I love it. People all the time, they say things like, check out this response I got from this email. And they show a screenshot. It's like, F you, never call me again, or never email me again. They like put that. It's like a badge of honor for salespeople. But what's funny is, to me, is that that person doesn't even, they'll never remember you. That's not even a bad relationship. To me, that's indifference. That's just you, again, finding a weak moment. That's another version of a weak moment where a person acts out a little bit and then labels you indifferent to them. Like, they're never going to remember that they just sent that to you. And like, even if you responded politely or whatever you're doing, I promise you that in most cases those people are completely disconnected. But I have stories from this kind of stuff, like where I recognize like that's indifference. And so I'd go down and do something like buy a bunch of dead roses and send them to that person and be like, hey, I bought these for our first meeting, but they died after that email that you sent me, and haven't been able to revive them since. But wanted you to have them either way. They cost me a pretty penny, and that kind of thing. Like suddenly, you're very memorable. You're unforgettable, is what you are in those moments. And even if the relationship is graduated from indifference to like it's bad, it's like well, you're unforgettable, but that person was offended by that. It's like good, don't forget me, because eventually you'll head over here into this space of good if I continue to nurture the relationship. Then 99% of us have a story about meeting our best friend, right? There's a small percentage of people that are loners. That's why I say that. So that never want a best friend and never wanted one in the first place, right? But we all have a story about, for the most part, meeting our best friend for the first time. I'll tell you right now that I ask people this question all the time, especially students. We probably did it too, Yakov, at some point. I asked them like, what was it like meeting them for the first time? And the literal 7 out of 10 answer is a negative moment. Your best friend that you met for the first time when that interaction that started the relationship usually was, yeah, they were the popular kid. Yeah, they were like beating me at tag. Yeah, they hit a home run off of me in my first little league game. Like it's always this like negative place that turns into fruit, because once that person exists in your ecosystem, there's actually a lot more that you have in common with them that you would have known in the first place. And it's a natural human emotion. It's a bad, ultimately again, a bad experience. It's a natural human emotion for a person to latch to that moment and to like stick around to see how this plays out. So that was a big long-winded answer, but hopefully it covers a little bit of ground beyond the question. Even like I think I covered probably like 3 questions in one there. So
Yeah, I just knocked off a couple questions, that's for sure. Um, I think that something that people struggle with is this idea. You mentioned the crumpled letter earlier, which is something that's a tangible object. And I think that people struggle with this idea is how do I create a good experience, or is it possible to create a good experience by taking a digital approach? I think that's something that a lot of people question. And wanted to ask you that.
yeah, so I think of when I think of like the digital side of what kind of experience we're giving people. Like, there's a couple of things that like almost immediately you can think of as ways to understand like how you're giving people an experience. Like the number one thing I think of is like content creation. So like if I'm kind of in a very passive but also proactive manner, giving thousands of people a look into my ecosystem through content. That's a good experience because like I can tell stories that vicariously you can live out. I can set up situations and set up things I've experienced that you could relate to, or maybe not. No matter what, they unlock a set of emotions and create an experiential moment for people. But the other side of it too is like if I'm like sending someone a message for the first time on LinkedIn, I highly recommend you pull out your phone, get off your laptop, click the the inbox function, type that person's name in, and then hit the record video button. And you've got 59 seconds to say everything you need to say, one shot, and just be raw and real with that person. Let them know like why you're reaching out. Use the framework, the rebellious framework that we use is create a familiar moment at the foundation of things, interrupt the typical patterns, cause emotional context. Right. When we do these things ultimately like over and over again through our messaging, no matter what the medium, it's an experience. Obviously, if you can have a prop in there, if you can hold up a crumpled letter, I was going to send you one of these, but it's I call it sales trash, but instead I sent you one of these. You can just delete this afterwards if you deem it to be sales trash as well too. My name's Dale. They call me the copier warrior. Right? It's a simple concept. Create curiosity, build relevance, find a familiar moment. Everybody hates salespeople. It's a joke that we nag on all the time inside of the rebellion, but it's the truth. And so like self-deprecation is it's a good way to like connect with people in some cases when there's a stereotype that we all kind of feel. Not even salespeople like salespeople. Like if you're a salesperson sitting at dinner and the phone rings at like 6:15 and it's some solicitor about like a cruise or something, I
Mm.
guarantee you're not telling the family like, hey, could you guys leave real quick? I need at least 20 minutes to talk to this salesperson. Honey, would you put my food in the oven real quick? Like that doesn't happen. Like you're like, why are you calling me after hours? Hang the phone up with the person. None of us have empathy towards sales. Period. even salespeople, right? So again, like if we could find these common grounds, if we could find a stereotype, an experience, a familiar moment, something that people share, and we can articulate that message through a medium, and it's an experience, period. Whether it's digital through a video, whether it's audio, nobody sends voice notes, right? I text voice notes sometimes for my first messages as well too. To people I've never messaged before. Like, don't be afraid of these types of things. These are like very humanistic connection style behaviors that get us back to like our roots as people. And again, if like we go back to earlier when we asked this question of like what is sales? Like how do we ultimately define what we do as salespeople, right? If we think on that level of ultimate legacy that we're building, of freedom that we're desiring to achieve, then we'll know that in every moment, every person matters. A good or bad reaction, every person matters. And we seek that response. Not because like we think that we deserve it by any means, but because we understand that in order to really ultimately find the things that we've been set on this earth to uncover and achieve the success that we desire for ourselves, not the plastic version of it, but like the real version of it, that we have to take risks. We have to give people these experiences. And I'll say it like this too: it's like when you do the first five, even if there's no response, I promise you that it's a much different reaction from the person receiving those things than the first five cold calls with a voicemail or the first five cold emails with a, pretty plain subject line. It's much different. By the time you get to 6 and 7 and 8, things change. By the time you get to 10 to 15 to 25, things are different. When you're in the thousands, it's a completely new game. We like at this point for us, it's like, well, who do we want to do business with? It's kind of the way we look at it. Like, who do we want to do business with outside of just like attracting the masses, if you will, through our own voice and our vibe and our brand? We like pick out like, well, this company would be sick to do some work with and sell, train their salespeople. And then we give them the right experience. We don't just like craft an email that we send or poke them on Facebook or, you know, make a cold call. Like we send them a full on experience, with lots of very traditional follow up behind it. Right. Once the medium is in place, it's much easier to pick up the phone and say, hey, this is Dale, the guy that sent you that flaming ball of crap in a bag that I left in the front porch. You Does that ring a bell? You know who I? It's like, well, yeah, you're the jerk that did something unimaginable and unspeakable to me. What can I do for you, right? And obviously, I'm being sarcastic, but if I ask in the same breath, like, did you get my crumpled letter? I see Damien is in here in the podcast. Like, Damien knows the response to this. It is always with intrigue, whether they did or didn't. It's like, you're what? And if they did, it's like, yes, I did. And it's a completely different conversation from there. If we want to be change inside of sales, like if we want to do things like say, like how do we give a virtual experience? If we want to do things like say, how do we give an experience at all? How do we separate ourselves from the pack? We have to be willing, first and foremost, to do things that are very uncomfortable, that are not the normal, and that stand apart. But that's in general, I think success on every level in anything that you do, operations, finance. Sales is just. It's not like we're special over here, and that if you do things different as salespeople, everything changes. It's like that in all things in your life. If you treat your wife better than any freaking human being on this planet for the rest of your existence with that person, or your husband, then you will find success on levels you never expected out of that relationship. If you do the same thing for a family member, for a friend, right? Strictly in a platonic way, obviously, because there's a difference between, your romantic interest with your spouse and a regular person that's, blood family or whatever the case. If we just sought every single day to like be more than just the person that's like a good guy or a good girl, but if we were the person that really cared, if we looked at everything from an eternal perspective and not just like this time on earth for how much longer I live, everything would change to every facet and capacity that you could possibly imagine. I live in a lifestyle myself personally that's almost unimaginable. Sometimes when I tell people like, I'll run into a random person at a coffee shop, like I'm not even in my home right now. I don't live in this place that I'm at, right? Like I'm always wandering, traveling, living my life, right? But I designed this through intentional action. I did stuff that most people would look at and be like, "What? You did what?" You sent a boat anchor to that guy, like a big, like a 2,000 pound boat. What? That's nuts. Like, well, yeah, but it got me the meeting, and I have a great relationship with him. No, there's always a great outcome to the things that are risky in our own opinions, right? We are our own worst enemy, and the only thing that's holding ourselves back.
Yeah, and it's you mentioned two things that stuck out to me. I mean, obviously you started speaking a little bit about legacy, which is when we start changing our patterns and we start thinking differently and we're willing to step out of that box, everything changes. Like, it's not just people like work-life balance, right? This concept that, oh my gosh, we have to separate work and life, when in reality they're so intertwined that when you go through the process of being willing to act differently and treat every single person like they matter in every single situation and realize that it's not about you, it's about them giving over taking. So then everything shifts. That's how we start building that legacy. Like, I had a client the other day. This is right out of the Sales Rebellion playbook. And he was like, this person's just completely ghosting me. Okay, how do we fix this? Send them a missing poster. He's like, I said, what? I said, like a missing in action poster. I'm like, go on Canva and create a missing poster. It was the last Zoom meeting you met with this person or the last event that you spent with them. Like, most likely doing this, if send that to them. He sent it. He sent me the screenshot. He's the burst out laughing in text. That's like rolling on the floor, basically, was the response. And it started the conversation again, right? He left an impression that he was going to be different to get this person's reaction, whether that's with a GIF, whether it's creating your own thing. But it starts moving into that legacy space where you can build a legacy through a sales position, let alone if you're the business owner doing the sales, right? In service, you are the business owner. You are the salesperson. You wear each and every single one of the hats within the business, right? And that's how you ultimately yourself got to where you are today, right? Through building that legacy through a sales position.
The missing person poster for anybody that's here that wants to see it. So you're spoiled. And he's right. Like, there's a lot of detail to this, right? But like, imagine also that you can send like 50 copies of this and ask like the employees to like dress the whole office with it, like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the time what we end up getting done is like reception will put this like on their door, well, for when they like come into the office. It's fantastic. And it says things like, help us find this person, last seen in a Zoom meeting on Thursday, July 14th. uh, there's lots of very personal things on here as well too. Like, we
Right.
mentioned his children in this one who work in the business with him. We put something like, salespeople approach this man with extreme caution. He will dismiss you. So like, we do things that are fun, and they're, they can be looked at as risky ultimately, but
It's poking fun at the reality,
what do
and
you
it's
got to
and
lose? That's what I have to
self-deprecating.
say. Like, what do you
It's
got to lose?
over
Like, is somebody going
anyways.
to kill you for doing this? Like, I've never heard of anybody dying for sending a missing. If someone gets pissed off, that's a different story. But let me tell you a story also, though, about a group of people where somebody used the missing person poster like maliciously inside of the organization. So the person had been fired, and so they used it as a joke. They reproduced it and they put it everywhere for a bunch of people to see as a joke, right? And they were like, this guy can't even, go to his meetings that he sets with salespeople. And it got back to somebody else, and it like really pissed him off. And in the moment, I remember thinking like, well, it's not your problem, ultimately. So like, that's kind of what came to mind first and foremost. But then I just said, just stay the course, just stay the course, keep working what you're working, keep doing what you're doing. And eventually over time, something will open back up to you. And what happens over time, enough patience and persistence, pleasantly, things open back up. And then ultimately, these new people that are involved will hear you out at some point, even if they didn't really like what happened because of something you did, but they know who you are. There's another instance of a rebel that was, yeah, I would say that this person, they used the digital format, the tangible. One of the owners of the company is a part owner of the New York Knicks. And so he used basketballs and challenged him via video on a court in New York to a one-on game of one-on-one. I mean, this guy went hard. All right, man, he spent a year trying to get in front of these people. And occasionally he would hear from them, every once in a while, this one particular person. Well, one day he calls and that person's gone. And he's like, well, what the heck? What am I supposed to do now? But they know who he is, the people that are taking the calls, right? And he's like, okay. They're like, yeah, you want to talk to so and so. So they get him in front of this person. And that human tells him, oh, we all know who you are. You're the guy that sends all the stuff, right? Like, yeah, that's me. Yeah, everybody knows you. Matter of fact, we're really excited to get a quote from you now that this person's out of the way. And, a lot of the time that's what sales is. Sales is like a pre existing relationship. Sales is an objection. Sales is a person that just like, they don't get it, but that person's probably only there for a season to begin with. Right. And
Right.
we can also find ourselves on the other side of those mishaps too, right? Like you can find yourself on the other side of, I should say, misfortune, like where somebody already has a relationship. Like you could be the person that person has the relationship with in the first place in your own story, right? With another customer. And that starts today. It
Right.
doesn't start tomorrow or yesterday. It starts today. It starts with like what actions you take in order to get in front of those people and be a part of their ecosystem to begin with.
Yeah. And it comes down, you talk about this all the time, the idea of servant leadership, right? And so many people, we talked a little bit about legacy, we talked about creating experiences, but this idea of servant leadership, how do you define that for someone in a sales role and also within a business owner, someone who's, even in a service based role, that they're the ones doing the sales?
I'm curious. This is a question. I mean, maybe you don't want to even answer it this way, but this is a question that I see you having a very good and strong opinion on, just knowing who you are. And I'm curious to hear what you think about this question, and then I'll back it up.
For me, and yes, servant leadership is really the understanding that, like we said earlier, you are not here to sell someone anything. You're here to understand what's really going on with the person you're speaking to. And then if you happen to fit into that, that's fine. That's great. So then you can give that person a service. Like nobody wants to be sold to. People want to buy, but when you are ready to understand from, within a leadership position, for sure, situational awareness, right? What's going on with the perception of the people that are around you, the comprehension of understanding how are you going to complement everyone involved, and can you see a future outcome that'll serve everyone within this situation, right? When you're ready to take yourself out of it and to not pay attention to your commission check or to the sale and how much it's going to bring you, and you're really there to serve the person in front of you, that's servant leadership in my mind.
It's solid. I look at servant leadership additionally, and I love what you said. I look at servant leadership additionally as a place where we as individuals define it from the perspective of excellence. So if we take that simple word and we sit back and we say to ourselves, like, well, what is excellence? And really boil it down to its true meaning. Excellence is probably one of the purest forms of and I should say the word magnificence comes to mind with it as well too. As a matter of fact, when I first started looking at words that like really had heavy meaning, I thought we could say magnificent, or we could say excellence. Now I think excellence though, like just because of the way that it's termed, is the proper way to look at it, right? But in its purest form, it means nothing but providing the most important thing in the best way to others, right? When we are providing it, right? And when we are taking action with excellence. And at the same time, too, it's about excellence to ourselves. Like if we are treating ourselves with excellence in the process of treating others with excellence, that is a servant leader. A servant leader is somebody that detaches from the outcome ultimately because they know that it's not about them. And that truth feeds the soul deeply. So people say, well, servant leaders are uh, selfless, and because of that, they don't think about themselves enough, and so there's detriment in that. And the answer to that question or that statement, though, the rebuttal, I should say, is simple. Somebody who is selfless through an agenda to get what they want, yes. they will suffer. At some point, they'll wake up and be like, everybody takes advantage of me. Nobody says thank you. Nobody ever asks me to do anything with them. Why am I always the one initiative? And that's the thought process that creates more doubt and that ultimately leads to like a breakdown. A selfless person that understands the true form of servant leaderships knows that because it's not about me, it's okay. And ultimately, because of that statement, like it's okay, they are so disconnected from the outcome that they can serve in an even more pure form that like literally feeds everybody. And then when they get something like a no, it's okay. They're not tormented by that no. They don't think, man, I really thought I had that one. They say, that's okay.
And
I'll
O
see you
stands for
next
next
go.
opportunity.
I'll see you next go around. Like that. So the servant leader to me is excellence in all things. But we have to understand this logic too. There are three facets in everyday life that I see them as, at least as people say there's your personal life and there's your professional life, right? They say this too. I also think there's your private life. There's a third piece to this. There's your personal, your professional, and your private life. People typically create those boxes. Anybody that knows me understands that like there is no box. Like I am the most vulnerable, open book possible, probably to my own detriment to an extent. But because of the the truth and transparency, I am free daily. I'm not locked into anything. I am not. There's no wedge. I am ultimately free. My conscience is clear. I know what I do is right, is truth, is ultimately for the betterment, even if it's not for my betterment. And I'm okay with that because I'm not the center of the universe. Okay. So it's okay if something doesn't go my way. Right. And so if we take excellence and we think excellence in our personal, professional, and private life, that means, again, like when I go back to these layers of how to be a sales rebel and how to be a better seller, we have to first and foremost how to understand how to be a better Dale, how to be a better Yakov, how to be a better Daniel, how to be a better Damien, how to be a better Sam. And when we start in those places, everything changes. Of understanding that it's not just about selling more, the hacks to get there, the quick subject line win to get somebody to open at an 80% rate. When we get past all that and we recognize to be a better salesperson, I have to be a better person in my professional, my personal, and my private life. I have to provide excellence in all things. So that means I have to make good decisions that feed the soul. I have to make good decisions that maybe sometimes hurt a little bit because I want that thing, but it's not what I need. It's not for me. It's against me. And that correlates back to, again, like looking at people, from the lens of business. How do I help this person in a way that ultimately gets them what they want? And if I don't get everything that I wanted, whatever, you know, next I'll find somebody that will ultimately cherish me and my abilities just the same. And like that goes to say also that it's okay to tell somebody in the midst of like trying to serve them that you're not the right fit, like backing out of that and not like toxically winning a sale just because you wanted a commission check, but instead being like, hey, this pays me like $11, like that's I'm okay letting this one go to somebody else. I don't think my company will be very happy with that amount of profit in the first place. So they might be tormented by my organization, right? Like if we can think of through those things a lot more effectively in general, then everything changes. But that's my take on servant leadership, just from a little bit of a non-traditional stance, but ultimately like a teaching that we give inside of the rebellion that, like we hold people accountable to as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, and it's something that I believe when people are ready, take that leap of faith that the other side will only do them good, their whole life will change. And I've experienced that myself time and time again, being a part of the rebellion, being, willing to be open and vulnerable and be who I really am, as opposed to trying to be this, like you said earlier, this plastic social media, pretend individual. Everything changes. And yeah, are you going to get impressions? You're going to get views, reactions, likes, comments, all that type of stuff. Yeah, of course you will. But you're not going to be pulling people towards you that want to be around you, that are going to be that tribe of people that want you to serve them. There's a very big difference between the two. This has been absolutely fantastic. I want to open the floor to some questions and answers. You can obviously put into, well, maybe it's not so obvious, but you can put in, maybe something you're stuck on today. And, me and Dale will take a hack at that. It could be a question on the topic of today, whatever that would be. But we'll give a minute for people to write something in there, and we'll definitely take a whack at it. But, on this last point that you said while we're waiting for that, I think that, so many people have, fear when it comes around this idea of being different. And, I put this on someone's post the other day when they were talking about, that fear is something that holds people back. Fear is two different ways of reading it. It's forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. And I think that a big part of what the rebellion teaches is, in order for us to rise, we need to face the realities of what people see us as, in order for us to change the way that we react to be the best people that we could be.
Yeah, man, I really just wish that people would understand that discomfort is like the greatest feeling. That, when you think about something making you comfortable or something being risky, that usually when you're in that moment, that we tend to kind of like start to create pros and cons. But if instead you can say, well, it has an element of risk and discomfort, and so that's actually a pro, and I should, consider this more and doing it, on a different level, and instead of just procrastinating about it. So
Yeah, and we have two questions in here, so let's see how far we can get with them. So, how do you get through the people who just don't want to talk to you? Okay, we have something. Let's say someone already, and then they hang up for whatever reason. So, how do you go through that process?
the thought process that I have is, if somebody just doesn't want to talk to you, then you most likely have not done anything to actually earn that attention in the first place. So a good example of this would be, again, like I come back to experiences and ultimately like the right kind of experience to give. And so like I had a guy that was ignoring me for a very long time, and I sent him a trophy that was like, I've got a picture of it somewhere. It's like, number one, it was like hide and seek champion, or like best person to like never set meetings with sales reps, or I gave him first place, in like the stupid category that I created. And I set a meeting faster than you could spit, once that guy got the experience, right? And the experiences leading up to it as well too. Sometimes they don't slap, as the kids say these days. So it's not like giving up after the first try. It's
Right.
the thought process of like continuing forward throughout it. So like if someone's not like responding to you, then you just have to like, do the old meme and say like, hold my beer, and then like go all in. Remember the word excellence. If you're truly ultimately going to serve somebody beyond reproach and with excellence, then you're going to do things that, go past this thing that this person could potentially ignore. Have a mural painted of them with their like, dog and the thing they sell, so like a boat engine, and make it like 24 by 36, so it's freaking humongous, and then have it delivered down in like the most audacious way possible by a logistics company, like fragile all over it. And I guarantee you every single person in the office is coming to see that. and
Right.
and that even if you don't get the meeting, you'll hear back at the end of the day. So I think it's kind of a cop out to say that like people won't respond to me. Yes, they will. You just have to be willing.
Just have to be willing to think out of the box. It's the same idea as like, oh, cold calling doesn't work. Yes, it does. You just need to create an experience with it. Hey, my name's Jakob. This is a cold call, but I got good news. I'm not calling about a timeshare or your car's extended warranty. Or, hey, this is Jakob. Would you rather throw your phone out the door, or give me maybe 30 seconds? I can tell you why I chose to call you today. Right? Poke fun at what it is that you're doing and interrupt those typical patterns of, hey, my name's Jakob. I'm calling from ABC Company, and this is what we do. This is how we help people. And I think that you and I should talk. Click. It didn't even get that far. It's already a click. Right? But that's the whole idea, right? It's creating that experience, and it can be done on a cold call. It could be done through the idea of, um, like you said, sending something to them physical, and it could even be done from a digital perspective, right? You can send a missing posters person, like my client did, over a WhatsApp. You don't have to send them a physical, actual copy. We talk about this all the time in the rebellion. Sending actual mail is one way, giving it to them is another, and sending a digital version of, hey, I was going to send this to you, and making a video out of it, or writing it even in an email form, right? There's so many different opportunities. It's just a question of how we're going to think out of the box in terms of being able to give the experience that people crave and desire.
It's a great point. And I see the question of how do you get a photo for somebody, like if you can't find a photos for somebody, how do you put that on something like a missing person poster or one of your creative outreach methods? And my answer to that would be that there's a couple things that you can think of. So if I can't see this person, like, and I just did this with a student, maybe he's watching or listening right now. Hey, what's up, man? But the thing that we did is that we used the things that that person is the most involved with. So this particular person was IT. So inside of like the actual marketing space, in regards to the experience that we gave, we used like PC monitors with his name on them. And then like even
Mm,
like the thought process of like you can kind of explain in those experiences that like I couldn't find a picture of you. So this
right.
was like the next best thing, right? Like is the thought process, but again, like there's ways to do it that way. Silhouettes work really well too, we have found. And again, there's like a stereotype to all of this as well too, just as much as there's like positive, there's negative. So you just want to be thinking again, like very proactively around like what you're doing and whether or not it could potentially offend somebody, because we don't want to offend people. That's not our narrative, right? So the more we can kind of keep a proactive perspective on like what true audacity is, that it's not offensive, it doesn't hurt feelings on purpose, but it does push the limits a little bit. The other thing that you can do too is like use an animal, that would like tie back to like the theme of the organization. So like if you're dealing with a like, and I should say like not just an animal, but like a thing, right, that goes with it, right? So like if I'm dealing with a National Basketball Association and there's a team and they have a mascot and it's the Orlando Magic, I'm going to send a dragon like as the picture of the person, or just use like a picture of like uh stuffs, silly cousin Charles, my contact, and like use an iteration of Stuff the Magic Dragon, but make it like this guy Charles instead, right? Is the thought process. So again, like you can use like their monikers, you can use their designs, you can use the things that they sell, their hammers, their front loaders, their IT services. And then Daniel had a good one here about translating experiences through remote, and two things. One, Daniel, you 100% can send crumpled letters in the mail. Actually, we find that to be very effective. There's a great rebel. He's also part of the tribe, Ruben Goldblum, and Ruben, I think somewhere in the ballpark of he did like 130 contacts that he was using mailers for. I want to say that he touched base with somewhere in the ballpark of 78 is the number. He might correct me on that. It might be more like 90, but I think it was 78. And just literally just by like using the medium of mail, he was selling into the blue collar space. So logistics and trucking. He has a product that complements the logistics space, the trucking space. So knowing your audience is really important too. Tech people, they're not necessarily like waiting for mail to come in, but it definitely blows their mind when they get like a dope piece of mail for sure that actually catches their attention. People like logistics though, or like construction, blue collar spaces. If you're selling into those, they freaking love a good experience like that, and they're kind of like ready for it to an extent, just because of their upbringing or how that looks. So hopefully that covers those two questions that are in here.
Awesome. 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 One of the things that we speak about every time as we're closing out the live podcast here is I have a page of notes. And if I try to attack every single thing I have on that page of notes, I'm going to falter and I'm going to flop on my face. Pick one thing that you took away from today and implement just that one thing to start with. And this way, it actually has success in moving forward. Dale, we had spoken right before we jumped on the podcast that you had an offer you wanted to, talk to everyone about. I'm going to put that in the chat, but take it away.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate the opportunity. The Sales Rebellion is having its first ever international in person event. Personally, I look at the way that the world is going, the way the economy is, where the economy is headed, the way that just in general business is evolving. As we are disconnecting from each other way too much, and we're seeing through action and being very intentional of like going on site to do cold calls like in rural areas and big cities, and just completely changing the game and obliterating this notion that somehow everything has to be done remote and that humans won't matter anymore. We've seen it enough to where we've decided September 26th, 27th, and 28th in East Tennessee in the city of Knoxville. We're going to be getting together just about 100 to 150 rebels. There'll be a cutoff on that, where we're going to put on 6 workshops. So speakers, but with a twist where you're going to have like hands-on workshops that'll be highly experiential. If you've heard about the sales rebellion before in our experiences, you know that we're nuts. And if you heard anything today that you thought that's crazy, just get ready for the in-person event. There'll be lots of incredible people to sit around and get to know better, and ultimately to build your network as well too. Some great sponsors that'll be at the event. But come and get out of your comfort zone. Come and learn with us. Come in and enjoy totality with us. Pull the curtain on the status quo of sales and be a part of the revolution, the rebellion, the change that's coming to the sales world in general. Come learn some incredibly epic ways to be able to put that into motion for yourself and into action. And you can't beat names like Stu Heineck, Kevin, Katie, Dorsey, Leslie Vanetz, Dewan Brown. We got some more that we're about to announce as well too. That'll be at the event teaching people. So if you're listening to this, if you're here today chilling with us, please check out salesrebellion.com/totality and consider coming and chilling at the event with us.
Absolutely fantastic. I've put my own contact information as well into the chat, whether it's my calendar link or you have a question that maybe we didn't get to today or you want more information on. You can feel free to send me a WhatsApp. But in this live podcast, we speak every week about something that's timely or interesting that you can add to your skill set toolbox. And if there's anything that I can do to help you in your sales game or in your journey, please feel free to hit me up for a 30-minute free strategy call just so that I can help you. No strings attached, although I would grab them because they do move quite quick. And that's it, Dill. This has been an absolute honor to have you on here today. And I appreciate you tremendously. And I'm looking forward to the next time.
Cheers, bro. Good to be here with you.
Appreciate it. Take care. And everyone, have a fantastic rest of your day. Take care.